inclusivity in the arts. This one is a double-edged sword because there's a very grave importance for inclusivity because it ensures representation, and representation is important because it informs mindsets, it helps with social understanding of different things, different kinds of people. And I think that's very important in terms of sensitizing people to the various kinds of identities and livelihoods that exist. But at the same time, I think there's also a need within dialogue of inclusivity within the arts to talk about exclusive spaces, right, where safety is concerned. I'm a big proponent of exclusive spaces for people who have previously been marginalized and people who are more vulnerable in society. For example, women and queer people. It's very important for us to be included in greater conversations, in media, in art, in governing spaces. But at the same time, it's important for us to have our own spaces outside of those spaces, because there's a very specific violence that we experience in those spaces. And some of the spaces, to be very honest, it's tables that were never made for us, and we're asking for seats at tables that were never made for us. And it's important to also be able to create our own tables and sit at them while being able to sit at, you know, the other tables and the bigger tables. I think it's just a matter of balance when it comes to that. And I think inclusivity as well in the arts, there isn't enough of that. And there's a lot of tokenization where we're now seeing a single story or specific tropes be repeated time and time again in terms of how queer people are represented. You know, for example, it's like with the Black Lives Matter movement at the moment, there's been a lot of genuine efforts, but there's also a lot of ingenuine approaches from a lot of brands and big corporations right now who feel that they need to speak up as a matter of pressure, not because they genuinely care. And I think that's the thing with inclusivity. We have to be careful, because that risk of tokenization and ingenuine inclusiveness is very harmful, because it still leaves people who have previously been excluded to a more grave violence. You know, they're still probably not addressed in the right way, probably might be discriminated against in microaggressions, you know, in tiny ways that might go by unnoticed but are very impactful and significant. And I think that inclusivity matters from the top to the bottom. It doesn't matter what role it is and what space it is. Inclusivity in the arts, there needs to be more queer people, there needs to be more women, black women at the forefront of organizations and artist movements. Because at the end of the day, I think art is about igniting consciousness, art is about perspective, and we have been erased from history for so long that we also are very cloudy on who we are. And the more that we are included, the more that we also create space for ourselves, the more that will be visible. And the more that our stories in their multifaceted, dynamic existences can take up space within the arts. I think it's really important, because that way we create a better picture, a more accurate picture of what actually exists, of reality. And it will help the young child like 10 years from now who might watch something and understand something about themselves that they're not able to externalize. And I think it's our duty as creators right now to fight for that kind of representation and inclusivity. And by fight, I mean to just make work about ourselves and for ourselves. I think that's one of the greatest things about inclusivity, is like fuck begging all these people to create space for us. Let's create our own spaces that are inclusive while also accounting for the safety that we need.